friends, my name is Sarah and today it is time to share with you my October reading wrap-up. Overall, October was a pretty solid month for reading. I didn't love everything that I read, but I did enjoy a lot of them for the most part, and I actually fell behind on my reading goal a little bit in September, and though I didn't catch up on my reading goal in October, I didn't fall further behind, which is good, and hopefully I will be able to get a couple extra books read in November and December and will still make my 100 in 2016 goal. And now let us jump into the statistics. In the month of October, I read a grand total of 8 books for a combined 2,428 pages with an average of 304 pages per book. 5 of those books were new reads and 3 of them were rereads. 50% of them were part of a series and 50% of them were standalones. For the genre breakdown, 3 of the books were fantasy, 1 was nonfiction, 1 was literary fiction, 1 was historical fiction, 1 was contemporary, and 1 was a mystery/thriller. As far as the audience is concerned, 3 of the books were for an adult audience, 4 of them were for a young adult audience, and 1 of them was for a children or middle grade audience. When it comes to the character diversity, 1 of the books was nonfiction and therefore did not have any characters to represent. 1 of the books had no diversity represented in its characters, and 6 of the books had ethnic diversity represented in its characters. When it comes to the protagonists in those particular books, again, 1 book was nonfiction and therefore did not have a protagonist. 3 of the books had diverse protagonists and 4 of the books did not have diverse protagonists. In regard to the setting, again, 1 of the books was nonfiction and therefore did not have a setting. 2 of the books took place in multiple places. 2 of the books took place in the United States. 2 of the books took place in the United Kingdom, and 1 of the books took place in Iceland. For the author gender, 1 of the books was written by men and 7 of them were written by women. For the publication years, 1 of the books was published in the 1930s, 2 of the books were published in the 1990s, 1 of the books was published in the 2000s, 3 of them were published between 2010 and 2015, and 1 was published in 2016. For the star ratings, I gave 3 books 3.5 stars, 2 books 4 stars, 2 books 4.5 stars, and 1 book 5 stars for an average star rating of 4.06. And now let us jump into the books. Up first we have Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. This is an incredibly beautiful literary historical fiction novel that is based on the true events revolving around the death of Agnes Magnus Dottir. Our main character Agnes is a true historical character who is the last woman to suffer capital punishment in Iceland. And the book tells the story of her life in the final days of her imprisonment leading up to her execution. And guys, I'd heard so many wonderful, wonderful things about this book and was really excited to finally jump into it. You know that I love historical fiction, and this book certainly did not disappoint. It is beautifully written. It is an incredible debut novel. The style of writing is very lyrical and lovely, and just the questions and themes that are presented in this book are so thought-provoking. I really loved the character development of Agnes and the family that she spends her final days with, and I just loved how everything developed as we learned about what was happening from day to day with Agnes and this family and about the actual events leading up to the crime that Agnes has been accused of and the like. It is just beautifully, beautifully written. The one issue that I did have with the book is that we flip back and forth between third-person perspective and first-person perspective. So if we are getting Agnes's perspective, it is from the first person, but when we are dealing with any of the other characters in the book, it is third person, and there is not always a very definitive break that tells you, oh, we're switching from first person to third person or whatever. And I'm generally not a big fan of that back and forth between perspectives. I really think you should just choose one perspective and stick with it. So that was my one sort of issue that I had with it, but other than that, I absolutely loved it. I wound up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars and would highly, highly recommend it. Up next we have The Secret of the Old Clock by Caroline King. So for the month of October, my TBR jar challenge was to read a childhood favorite, and as I was thinking through, I realized that almost all of the other childhood favorites that I have, like A Wrinkle in Time and The Westing Game and The Phantom Tollbooth and the like, I had already read this year. And you could say Harry Potter, but I didn't actually read Harry Potter till I was in college, so that does not count for a childhood favorite. Same with Anne of Green Gables, and so I decided I would pick up Nancy Drew for the first time in like over 15 years, I'm pretty sure. And I was a little nervous going into this because I was just really afraid that it was going to be awful and I was going to have this like memory of really loving this thing. And now with my more objective literary perspective, I was gonna be like, why did I ever love this as a child? This obviously is the first book in the Nancy Drew series. We get introduced to Nancy and her father and their housekeeper Hannah for the very first time, and on so many levels it is very much a children's book. I'm pleased to say that there wasn't anything about it that made me go, oh, this is awful, why didn't I love it? But again, it is very much a children's book. It is a very simple writing style. The mystery is not particularly particularly complex or anything like that, but I did still enjoy it. If I had to give it a rating for my personal enjoyment of it this particular time around, I would give it 3 stars, but because of the nostalgia factor, I would probably give it 4 stars, so I averaged it out and gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Up next, we have the illustrated edition of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Chamber of Secrets is actually probably my least favorite book in the series, not because it's bad, it's just I love all of the other ones for other reasons more than I love this particular one. But as with the Sorcerer's Stone, reading it in the illustrated edition is such a new and unique experience. Jim Kay did an incredible job with the illustrations, and it just brought a whole new life and light to this story. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and a general, like, I guess you could call it trigger warning. If you guys are afraid of spiders, then you are going to probably have an issue with a couple of pages in the illustrations in this book. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff dealing with spiders in this particular book. If you've read the story, you know what I'm talking about. There's one 2-page spread in particular, and then another full page where the crew that Harry and Ron meet in the Forbidden Forest are very nicely displayed. So if you have a severe phobia of spiders, just be warned when you are potentially reading this book. But again, really enjoyed it, really enjoyed this newer reading experience by having the illustrations there, and again, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Up next, we have Elements of Style by Erin Gates. It's basically a combination of essays that Erin Gates writes about her life and her experiences that sort of introduce each room as she goes through it. So she might talk about a experience that she and her husband had while renovating that particular part of the house, or a memory she has that has to do with it. And from there, she then goes into just tips and advice on decorating that particular room and gives you thoughts on how to style it, how to make sure that it is inviting and engaging, and all of the things. I really did enjoy this book. I found the personal essays to be just fun and interesting to read, and obviously I loved looking at the gorgeous photos and reading Erin's advice on putting together a home that you love and that fits your lifestyle and fits your personality and the like. So in the end, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and if you are an interior decorating fan, I would definitely recommend picking this one up. Up next, we have The Shell Collector by Anthony Doerr. So my TBR jar challenge from the month of September was to read a collection of short stories or poems, and I never really chose one that I wanted to read. And then I remembered that Anthony Doerr, the author of last year's Pulitzer Prize winner, All the Light We Cannot See, made his debut with a collection of short stories called The Shell Collector. So I decided to pick that up because I really loved All the Light We Cannot See and particularly enjoyed Anthony Doerr's writing style, so I was excited to experience his debut stuff. In the end, I was not as pleased with this particular collection as I expected to be based on my enjoyment of All the Light We Cannot See. It's not that it's bad by any means. Anthony Doerr's beautiful writing style is still very evident, and that is the one thing that made me not completely give this a terrible rating is, again, the writing style is just quite lovely. And there are a couple of individual stories like So Many Chances and Macondo that I did really enjoy, but on the whole, I just felt like a lot of the stories fell pretty flat. Again, they were beautifully written, the lyrical, just lovely, refined style that I fell in love with in All the Light We Cannot See is very much evident in this first story, but I'm beginning to think that I may just not be a short story person. If you are a fan of short stories, I do think that you would enjoy this because they are very well written and there are definitely some interesting tales that he tells, but for me, it just kind of fell a little bit flat. So 3.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because of the writing style. Up next, we have Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. This is the 3rd and final book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, which is a YA paranormal fantasy series that primarily deals with angels and demons. Obviously, since this is the finale to the series, I'm not going to say a whole lot about plot, but I did really enjoy it. It was very action-packed, very intriguing, but still had some really great character development, and we continued to get awesome stories for Karoo and Akiva and other characters that we started to get to know in the second book, and I loved the introduction of Eliza and some of the other new characters that we met in this particular book. The two things that threw me off a little bit, one is Laini's writing style. She has a very flowery writing style, and I normally love very flowery writing styles, but there were moments where I was like, okay girl, I get it, like he has really pretty eyes, or I get it, like, you know, they love each other, or, you know, whatever. There were just moments where it did feel like a little bit much. The other thing that I sort of took issue with is the end of the book. Well, really, I just have mixed feelings about it. There's a part of me that really loves the fact that it feels a little bit unfinished, which I know some people have, that's their issue with it, is it feels unfinished. But I liked that because it's not everything is all prettily tied up in a bow. She sort of describes it as like a happy middle, not necessarily a happy end, and I really liked that, and I would not at all be opposed to, you know, more stuff with these characters, because I really, really love Karou and Akiva and Hazael and so many of the other really strong women that we have in the series. That's probably one of my favorite things about the series, is like the women in this series are just so freaking strong, and it's delightful. But yeah, if you are a fan of YA fantasy and have not picked this one up, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I will most likely be doing a spoiler-free review of the series as a whole within the next couple of weeks if you want to hear more of my extended thoughts on all 3 books. Up next we have Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. This is of course the 3rd book in the Harry Potter series. I am continuing with my reread, and Prisoner of Azkaban is my 2nd favorite book in this series. I love it for so many reasons. Remus Lupin is one of my absolute favorite characters in this series, and I love just the new layers that get added to the story. The scene in the Shrieking Shack is one of my all-time favorite scenes in the entire series, and I love how Harry's character and his backstory continue to be developed as we learn more and more about what happened to Lily and James and the like, and the addition of characters like Remus Lupin and Sirius Black. And I just absolutely adore this book. Like I said, 2nd favorite book in the series. As you might expect, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And finally we have Kindred Spirits by Rainbow Rowell. This is a little tiny short story that was published for World Book Day earlier this year, and it is basically about a girl named Elena who goes to stand in line for The Force Awakens, and about her experience standing in line. It's really short, it's like 60 pages. It was cute, and that's about all I can tell you. Obviously, in my discussion about The Shell Collector, I'm not a big short story person, and this one was not bad or anything. It has Rainbow Rowell's writing style, which I absolutely love, and I did enjoy the character of Elena and the other people that she interacts with while she's waiting in line, and the sort of arc of this particular short story. But again, there's just so little time for character development and all of those things, so it was cute, and that's about all I can give it. Is just, it was cute. And I think in many respects that's probably just what it was intended to be. But I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Well, there you have it, friends. That is my October reading wrap up. If you have read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know in the comments below. If you want to follow me elsewhere online, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads, all at Sarah Ann Hayes. The links for those profiles will be in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye! Hello friends, my name is Sarah, and today it is time for my October... As far as the audience is concerned, 2 of the books took place... Prisoner of Azkaban is my second... I'm really good at numbers, guys.